Do you want to start introduction?
Yeah. Should I say it?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Alex Martin.
My name is Olivia Higgins.
My name is Isaac Elliott.
I'm Courtney Q.
And I'm Stephanie Stack.
Okay, so going into question one, and the basic principles of media ecology, we kind of hit on in class like all of the points of, I guess we'll just start with one and then work through the rest of them, but like technology giveth and taketh away. And we talked about how like you can't be blind to one side or the other, because obviously there's both pros and cons to the world of technology and all that it's given us. And then it kind of like talks about media ecology, technological pragmatism, and technological determinism, which we kind of touched on in class too. Like obviously we don't really agree with the pragmatic effect because technology has affected us significantly in both what he says, the documentary says, just like living out life, and then but also not determinism because we obviously have something to do with it.
Yes, definitely. This all goes into technology and human judgment. So our discussion about algorithms. So we talked about algorithms and human judgment at odds. So how do we think like this plays into our?
So I think it touches on like metadata and stuff. So our phones like they take all the information that we do, like the shopping and all that, and they kind of predict like what we're gonna buy and stuff. So like Amazon, if you order something, the next day it'll pop up like, here, order this or whatever. So that's kind of like algorithms like predicting what we're gonna do.
Yeah, they're kind of winning in the sense that we're becoming, as Rushkoff stated, mindless consumers when technology tells us how to do something. This also factors into when facing adversity, we decide to take the easy button. Yeah, so.
I think that kind of ties into like the one-eyed prophet idea, and like just from Postman, that like seeing what new technologies can do and are incapable of imagining what they will undo. So like that's kind of like where you're going with like the algorithms and stuff like that and predicting, like, okay, we see it as, you know, an advancement or something of convenience, but like what is that undoing to ourselves as individuals with, you know, the human judgment and everything.
I think this went into, somebody said, I remember reading something about that, like that idea of prediction. Like there was a quote, I believe, about we can never, something to do with art. One second, actually. There was a quote mentioned here.
Sorry, so going off what she was talking about, so one quote in so one of the books he talks about medium as a message, and in that book it quotes it just says, are we more than our metadata? Like, are we more than what our phone predicts us to be? Because all our time goes into that. Are we more than an algorithm, basically? So.
Yeah, I think that ties into the second principle of media ecology, where different technologies have different forms, where function follows form, medium is the message. So something from Postman, he said our task is to understand what the design is of the technology or what the technology is designed to do, and then what. Because once the technology runs its course, will become obsolete and need to be overturned. And is that just like a constant process? Like, what do you guys think?
I think it's just like, pretty much just like an ongoing cycle of just like, we're given this, we use this to like its fullest extent, and then, you know, after that, it's like, all right, what's like the next big new thing that's gonna like keep pushing it? Because like at first, it was like the internet, and then it was like the internet on like our cell phones, and then like now it's just kind of like, what's the waiting game gonna be as to like, what's that next step?
And it's kind of like how Rushkoff was talking about, like every corporation wants that like relentless pursuit to grow, which is kind of like led to the demise of everything because we want the next thing. The corporations obviously have to build the next thing, and it's kind of like cannibalizing all of the smaller opportunities that other individuals or businesses might have.
Yeah, and I think I remember the point enough to like kind of like summarize it, but like we never know the implications or like what's going to happen. Like the person who created what was happening never knew exactly what was going to happen with this. So I think I remember we or something that I put was, we're now just seeing like the effects of social media on society with the economy of likes. So I think that's like an important component, especially with ongoing fragmentation.
Well, yeah, going back with like pros and cons of like technology, it's like you know, it should make it convenient for us to like do everything, but if it's taken all the time out of us, then it's kind of like backfiring on us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's pretty counterproductive.
Mm-hmm.
And then that would kind of tie a little bit into the next point of technologies work and compete together, which we talked about like has started from day one with the whole clock and printing press working together, and then once the TV was introduced, works against said printing press because it's the centralized like one message to the masses, and then come the internet, decentralizes supposedly, and obviously sends out to the masses as well, which kind of like changes society, changes our ideas, changes the whole want for an easy button, want for the next great thing in technology that we were talking about on both sides.
Yeah, speaking of the easy button, I'm gonna throw in that question about the instantaneous. A lot of us are doing our digital detox right now, and I was just wondering about like the challenges, like were there any challenges not being able to have that instant access to communication? In other words, did you wish there was that easy button?
Oh,
Direct?
absolutely. Yeah, I know Courtney and I talked about this before, like trying like, oh, like go to lunch with your friend. It's like, okay, like if you see them in person, it's not like, hey, you want to grab lunch on Wednesday or something. No, it's like, okay, we have to meet at Options at 3, and you know, we're gonna be on this side of Options. Like, you know, it's like much more detailed and much more like responsibility, like not only on yourself but on the other person as well. So like make sure that they like are there and everything.
Find you if there's a change. I think that was a big thing. Yeah, right now I'm going through it, and that's definitely been a big component of it. Or even just like needing to, as like my major kind of, it's not necessarily required, but it's important that we stay up on current events. So without like having that, like being able to look at that, I've been feeling kind of like lost in that sense in my classes because people are saying, did you hear this?
Right.
And I don't necessarily have the access to look it up quickly. Now during class I can, but at other points it's just been like, I'll just be at conversation. I'm like, yeah,
And that's
no,
kind of
I
what we
did not
talked
hear that
about.
in
Oh,
news.
sorry, but that's kind of what we talked about in class with like corporations and stuff robbing our time because like we have to do everything at a certain time, and it's like we don't have like any free time. Like we have to set appointments to even have lunch and stuff at 3 and things like that. So
I thought it was interesting that once I popped out of the detox, which I think you guys are both done, right?
Yeah.
Like the first couple hours that I had my phone back, I was in like sensory overload. I was like, I can't do this. Like this is way too much stimulation. Like back at it again. So like it's interesting how it's so easy for us to like fall into the trap of like using it and like having it be easy, but then when we're like used to not having it, like going back into it again is like almost like a culture shock.
Right.
So like I think in like the way that we've talked about it in class and stuff, where like technology is everything, like if we really tried and like really stopped, I think we would be able to like reshift and like not be as sucked into like the culture that we've created.
I think it's kind of like, I don't know, we've all found our way like to use the phone or like to use like any type of social media to like communicate. So I feel like it would be almost just as easy to like learn how to not use it than to learn how to use it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Kind of going back to like you mentioned time, I just thought like time and has a lot to do with like culture and time are like closely related and stuff. So like I was just thinking about like how you said like we're all so set on like this like time thing that like without my phone I don't have a watch, I don't have an idea of time. So that's been kind of very difficult because I have to be at a certain place at a certain time throughout it, and then also just with like my personality, like I have to like be doing this. So like I just think that has like a pretty good impact on it. There was something else about the phone that I had about like the impact, but we can come back to that.
about the phone technology.
Yeah. Oh, even just something as simple as trying to figure out the weather.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I
like
was
you'll
having
be
that.
out during the day and everything seems fine and you leave your phone there, but then when you're there and all of a sudden it's raining and you realize
Yeah.
And the last 2 weeks
Well,
has been
that
60,
changed.
negative 20, and 45.
yeah, that's kind of been
Yeah.
that's definitely been something.
Yeah, just like commenting real quick on like the time. Like I had like almost zero concept of time.
Yeah.
Like, I had my watch for a little while, and then like my watch battery died like halfway through, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I have no idea what I'm like, where I'm going or what I'm doing. And like before like the digital detox or whatever, like I'm the type of person like, okay, set an alarm 5 minutes before you have to be, you know,
Mhm.
wherever and everything.
Oh yeah.
And so it's like not having that, and then like not having the watch, and I'm like, oh my god, this is terrible. So I like had to make a CVS where I'm like, I need a watch battery. I can't do this.
I use alerts on my phone, like
Mhm.
reminders.
Yeah.
And without my reminders, I would be forgetting to do stuff during the day. So I had to specifically like, okay, you have to do this. So I had to write it out.
Mhm.
But another thing, this kind of, I was remembering that video that we watched in class from The Office and stuff, and I actually had to rely on my GPS the other day, and it just made me realize like how much I do rely on technology in that sense, because without it, I wouldn't have been able to get where I was going.
Which kind of ties into that whole like idea of like we exist in this society of zombies just because like everything's so easily given to us, but also like easily tuned out. Like for me, I listen to my music every time I'm walking on campus or riding the bus or something because I don't really care what the person screaming 2 rows in front of me is saying. Like,
Yeah.
but then whenever that was like removed, and I was like, I don't know, like not desensitized to everything. It was interesting to watch. One, what other people were doing, like how many people almost get hit by a car because they're like looking at their phone or not paying attention to like what people are saying. But then like 2, realizing that I did that and wasn't like cognizant of it.
And that plays into like social media and stuff too, and like just constantly being busy on your phone, not like paying attention to the world around you.
I think the hardest part for me was just like was not being able to like, I don't know, whenever I get bored, like within like 20 seconds of just like sitting down, I'm like, and
Yeah.
that was like the hardest thing. And there were like, it was a lot easier than I thought it was gonna be, honestly, like because like I knew I wasn't going to be able to rely on it, and leading up to it, I like kind of practiced a little bit with just like not using it, but like there were little things that like made it like so much harder, like trying to like get like place to place and just like
Yeah,
It's
and then
because-
I almost
oh,
felt, I almost
There you
felt
go.
like an inconvenience at times because my friend, I would call my friend and be like, I can't talk right now, and like they would text, because typically, like a lot of people, they don't really like it when you like call them on the phone, they would rather you just text message
Right.
them. So at the same time, like if I were to make a call, I would actually factor into like my 20 minutes, like,
Mhm.
hey, is it okay if I call at this time?
Yeah.
Just so
Mhm.
like the individual is okay. But going along with that is I actually had, I think, even more meaningful conversations with people because I was on the phone and there wasn't the like send message 3 hours later.
Mhm.
Right.
Hey, you know,
Yeah.
so it was actually a little better now. So I think that was
That's going back to like us relying on everything with technology. Like we can't even know the time because we rely on it. You know,
Yeah.
we don't even know when we're bored. And even go back to the algorithms, like we don't even know what we want to buy. It just tells us what we want to buy. And we just say, okay, Amazon, click one button, and then boom, it's here. So,
What's interesting though is like even though like at points like I didn't have like a concept of time, I like felt like I don't know, like I didn't have any burdens or anything. Like
Yeah.
I felt like it was
You
kind
feel
of
more-
weird. I felt like okay, I'm alright. Like
yeah, I
It's
actually
okay.
feel more
Yeah.
calm. Like
Yeah.
I feel better.
You didn't?
no, I felt very like pretty much just like claustrophobic. Maybe not claustrophobic is not the right word. I just felt very like uneasy like the whole time, like the whole 2 weeks. Just because also I do like all my work and make my money from like my computer, and so like it was just like, and I told like our bosses like, alright, I'm taking like 2 weeks off just because like I have to for school,
Yeah.
and then send the assignment, and like that was like just like the hardest part. Like I felt like it didn't get easier at all. I felt like it just got harder.
Yeah.
And then when I got my phone back, I was like, I then realized like how dependent on it. I was like, I can definitely do it, and then I realized like once I got it back, it was like, alright, this thing runs my life,
Did you guys,
and I'm cool with that.
like
Yeah.
because we couldn't really be on social media, did you guys actually feel more connected or did you feel disconnected? like in that sense, without being able to see everybody's things. Did you feel?
I don't know how you felt, but I felt more connected like with the people, like my roommate and like the people here.
Yeah.
And like I'm still like really close with some friends from high school, so like in a way I felt disconnected to them, but it didn't really feel that way. It felt like, okay, well, like they're real good friends, like, you know, I'm not gonna lose them or anything like that. And like I actually lost like a couple Snapchat streaks, and I'm like, you know what, I don't even really feel bad about it, like, because for some people it's just like, oh, you send like one selfie a day and like that's your Snap streak.
Yeah, the
And it's
streaks.
just like it
Doesn't mean anything.
The
Yeah,
streak
exactly.
shouldn't
It
mean
wasn't
or-
anything.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like the streak isn't representative of your true relationship.
Right.
It's just
Mhm.
a thing of technology.
yeah.
I think that I kind of liked it because there were times where like I didn't want to like text people that were like in organizations or like just annoying things. I was like, well, I can't, sorry. Like it was kind of a nice like caveat out of like, well, I'm on a detox. So like there's some people it was nice I didn't have a connection to and like got to distance myself from for 2 weeks.
There were like some ways that I kind of like, not cheated, but like there were definitely like I pulled out my my iPod Shuffle, and that's how I would listen to music. I didn't know if that actually counted as like still.
I used my
Like-
radio, like an alarm clock
Yeah,
radio. Like,
yeah. So
I
I
was
was.
having such a hard time
I know.
without
Yeah.
music.
For me, like,
Yeah.
like I'm a musician, like music is like what keeps me like centered. So like I had to do that. I'm trying to think of what else I did. I have like I'm really into like taking pictures, and I have like an old camera, and like it was nice to use that instead of like my phone to like still be able to do stuff. So it was also still like possible to like go out and do things like that I'm still doing. It was just like it was much harder like to I don't know, you have to go back to like the means that we had 10 years ago to like do the same thing. So like, it's still possible to do everything you do with a phone besides like Google things instantaneously, but like
Yeah, I honestly felt, sorry, at
No, you're-
times just like awkward. I'd be waiting for something, and
It
I
was
would
so
just
many
be
people
sitting
looked at me
there,
like I was
but
crazy.
nobody would be
Mhm.
talking. They were
Yeah,
all on their
right.
phones, so I would just be. I forget where I was, but I was mentioning to a friend, like everyone was on their phones, you know, except me. So
Yeah.
I mean, like nobody was engaging, and it made me realize just how disconnected that we
Right.
all really are, even though we're all like surrounded by each other. I
I
mean,
felt that awkwardness too. Like I was eating lunch like by myself one day, and like one of like the catering workers like walked by, and like he just like looked at me, and I'm like just eating lunch. like I mean, it's weird how like people think like, okay, like because like everyone has their phone, like that's the norm, and then like if somebody doesn't, it's like out of place.
mhm.
One thing that was big for me, I think like my biggest like lesson learned was whenever I was having conversations with people and they would be on their phones, and I obviously couldn't be on my phone because like it was gone, but like they were still trying to converse with me, but clearly they weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
Like it really bothered me because I would
Yeah.
realize like I wasn't their center focus, and so after repeating myself or like them just like brushing off whatever I said, I was like, okay, well like screw this, I don't want to do this because I know that I did that before like I did the detox, but like it really made me aware of like how many empty conversations we have all the time just because like we're busy paying attention to other important things. But
And, like-
Yeah, I went to dinner and I didn't have my phone, like a few others didn't, but the people who did, the conversation seemed to be sometimes centralized on like whatever was on the phone.
Mhm.
Even like just like that one person's phone, like the conversation was like impacted around.
Right.
So that was kind of interesting. So yeah.
No, you're fine. And yeah, like on top of what you guys said, just like technology, like it suppresses your emotion basically. So like, I mean, you can have those emotions, but like even sending through text, you're like not giving everything that you're like wanting to say or do, and it's like we're having these just like conversations like that aren't really meaningful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
really
face to
hollow,
face.
like
Yeah.
shallow conversations.
And it kind of makes like all of us like more individuals, like caring about ourselves because we're just focused on our social media and what's going on our phone, and basically not what's going on around us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then I guess just tying back to the question, and maybe we can move on to number 2.
Mhm.
Because we're
Yeah.
like half an hour. Would we all agree that like media ecology is the most reasonable / accurate for describing the effects of technology?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I would
Absolutely.
think so.
Okay,
Mhm.
cool. All right, on to tetrads. Who wants to tetrad first?
I think. Sorry.
Do you want to do it?
Yeah,
Steph?
sure.
Go ahead. Yeah. I
Okay,
was like,
so for like the first one, like what does it extend? A cell phone obviously like extends like communication that would otherwise be unavailable. Like just thinking back to, well, I guess kind of jumping to what it obsolesces, like landline phones, like it's convenient in that way because, okay, if you're not at home or, you know, you're long distance or something, you have that communication that's available. So just convenience with that. Then also like all of the like apps that we have, like weather, banking, business, like, you know, different like stores that you shop at, they have those, you know, an app for everything, as well as music. So then like going back to what it obsolesces, like landline phones, telegrams, pagers, phone booths, desktop computers, like, cause your emails are on there, like there's Word, PowerPoint, apps now, and then also books for people who have like the iBooks or eBooks or whatever. And then to what I think that it retrieves, like obviously the same as what it obsolesces, and then I just added in like walkie-talkie, you know how like people are like, hey, like, you know, whatever. And then I think whenever like pushed to an extreme, like, I mean, people can consider like their cell phone like their limb. Like if they don't have it, like I felt like I wasn't walking around with an arm or something. So like to that extreme, like it's like someone's like, you know, a fifth limb or something, their lifeline. Like something that I was struggling with, like how was I supposed to wake up in the morning? Like I didn't have my alarm on my phone and way to communicate and everything. So it's just like in that way. And then taking that like maybe a step further, because like we have like location services and, you know, everything like that, like, and then like government surveillance and everything, like it could be like a tracking device. So like that raises issues like privacy and everything. And then just one final thing that I mentioned, it's like equivalent to like your wallet and keys, like you never leave the house without it. So like, you know, 15, 20 years ago, like that was the thing, like wallet and keys and that's it. But like now we have that third element of like our phone.
Yeah, I kind of had really similar, like basically I have just about all the same things that you do. But when it came one to flipped into, I remember Rushkoff, he mentioned that it enhances or amplifies mobility and freedom. But as we talked about in terms of the digital detox, we felt actually more free without our phones in relation to like time connecting with people. So that I said, what does it flip into with push to extreme? I said like, it's like no freedom in a sense. But yeah, and I think I just added like one thing when I was like faxing, but I also talked about like the idea of like privacy. Yeah, faxing. I've never had to fax anything before. I worked in an office.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it.
For mine, like with the extension thing, pretty much the same that you had, like constant communication, but also like long distance communication. Obviously, like it's so much easier to like FaceTime my sister that's in New York City right now all the time because like I can. Or like when I studied abroad, it was so nice to be able to talk to my family because like without my phone, I would have not talked to them for 3 months outside of like postcards that took a month to send. And then also like the whole connection with the world news, and like while it might be fragmented or might not always be the most truthful, like it's super easy to go on 17 sources on our phone and just be like, well, here's everything that's going on. Obsolescence, I kind of took it as like more of a smartphone thing than just like a flat cell phone, because I feel like smartphones themselves have almost obsolesced phone calls. Like yeah, they're there, but like I think we would all agree it's so much easier to just text someone than like carry on a phone conversation, because even you said it sucks up so much more of your time to like talk to people on the phone.
Yeah.
And then it also like obsolesces, I think, cameras kind of, because like we have our phones, so like what's the point in carrying around a huge camera all the time? Like obviously they have a lot more quality, but it's just easier to have that for literally everything. And then for retrieve, I said like communication and also a sense of community with like all of the apps that we have, just because like you have a following, I guess, that kind of like listens into everything that you're saying, whether good or bad. And then reversal, mine, not so much like the whole limb thing, but I said it creates like a fake reality, just because like it's your own little world in this little box and everything revolves around you, so like super easy to fall into like self-absorption and the need for like the desire and constant gratification. But it could all just be a filter, or it could all just be like a catfish kind of account sort of thing.
I think we all have very like similar tetrads, but mine for enhance I have enhances communication, obviously, just like can do anything, like talk to anyone at the like snap of a finger. Travel, and just like you don't have to, like you can just get tickets to anywhere, like you don't have to, you can just like Uber is like fantastic. I don't know what I would do without Uber. I mean, I would take the bus, but like I'm obviously much prefer Uber over the bus. Productivity, it's so much like easier to just like, I mean, and I feel like productivity is like a double-edged sword a little bit, but like I don't know, I feel more productive like with my phone because like I have like a time set up for like everything I do all day, like I can follow it perfectly. Mobility, you can just do anything like on the run. Like if you're paying for like parking in like Southside, all you gotta do is just like turn on your phone, go to the app and pay it. Banking, like you said, like just being able to like, anytime I get like a check, just like put it down, take a picture of it, it goes right in my bank account. It's crazy. Obsolete, desktop, home phone, cameras, calculator, MP3 player, games is a big one. Like you can just instead of playing board games like with your friends like right there, you can literally just like pull up the Battleship app on your phone and have a group of like 6 people that you're actually just playing with.
Scrabble instead of Words with Friends.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. What is a retrieve? I said community and socialization and learning. Like before, like you learn everything through like reading books or like watching TV, and now it just like I wonder, like I have a question about literally anything, Wikipedia, like right there. And then community, I think that it helps community in some aspects because like I don't know, like the Discord app, like you can just talk to anyone while doing anything. Like group chats make it like super easy, but also at the same time, it's just like that face to face is like you don't need that anymore. You know, I can talk to like 6 of my friends from like around the country just by like just through an app. And then for reversal, I have antisocial, reliance, compulsion, and addiction. I think for me personally, compulsion is like the most like reversal out of those, just because like I don't know, like I was saying, like my go-to thing is like to sit down, and then if I go 20 seconds with just like looking around, then first thing I do is pick up my phone. So like that's my tetrad. But
Okay, so going off what you guys said, I think it extends just, like your voice, basically, like you can talk to anyone in the whole world through either social media or message or whatever. And then, what is it, obsolescence? I said human interaction, because like, some people think like, what's the point of even hanging out if I could just text them? Why should I go see them like just send them an email or whatever? Reversal, we're basically like slaves to like technology, like we were talking about. And, if you use it too much, it kind of takes a hold of you. And then retrieve, like we said, it's like part of you, and when you don't have it, you nothing to rely on. You're kind of lost. So.
Everybody happy with tetrads?
yeah.
Cool. Alright, so into throwing rocks at the Google busting compared to all watching machines of love and grace.
Well, I guess we should address for starters Silicon Valley and the Californian ideology, vision of the world as like an interconnected system. So that was one major thing throughout the text, I think.
Yeah.
Really.
We talked about Silicon Valley and this thing more than
right.
literally
I'm like,
anything
well,
else.
that one, we're just gonna, that helps. So that was definitely one of them.
I think kind of like tied into that based on like the like final question in said question of like, does technology create a self-sustaining, stable, and just society for individuals? I think like that alone proves that it doesn't create a society of free individuals.
It was
Like,
all an illusion.
yeah, it can be self-sustaining for like a little bit. Like they said, whenever they went into those Asian countries, like their economy was great for like a couple days, and then everything crashed. Or like Silicon Valley, there was like the .com bubble. Yeah, it worked for a little bit, but then everything failed. So like, and it doesn't make free individuals. It just makes us kind of like you said, you're trying to have like slaves, and then once it crashes, like we crash too.
Yeah.
This also goes back into the idea of the economy and debt. There was a lot of, they were trying to get people to spend more and more, and then they were all in debt, and then everything crashed. And when they took them out of the system, like they were, so that definitely demonstrates that. in terms like Rushkoff also, he mentions throughout the text he'll just throw in like economic ecosystem in there. So I realized that, so that means like everything connected and we're all this one giant economics. This is just like to connect that factor of like how like the America and China and like the others were all connected, and then they thought there was stability, but really there was like instability because within the ecosystem there's this there's the idea of stability that's not really there, or something of that notion. So so really it hadn't distributed power at all. Rather, it had like shifted. So it centralized the power when they were trying to do something else. So that was like another thing.
Yeah, I agree about like what both of you guys said. Just how like it was more of an illusion of stability.
Mhm.
And at the very end, it was like the last line or two of the documentary that like the Californian ideology instilled in us the mentality that we are cogs in the machine, that we're hopelessly powerless, because we recognize that, okay, like at first we thought we had the power because, you know, we had the economic growth, all the production that was, you know, like false and everything, but we recognize that, okay, like we actually don't have the power, it's the people who have the money have the power. And so like what do you guys think about how like they incorporated like the Clinton scandal and like the Clinton administration like into like the documentary? What do you guys think about how that played in?
I thought it was interesting to just show that like Clinton was like supposed to be the one running the show, and he was more so like a puppet that kind of like went off the rails, and so it was more so his cabinet that was like running the show.
Yeah, it was the people working within the economy
Mhm.
that were running it.
And like everything he promised, not everything he promised, but a lot of the things he promised weren't something that could have been like upheld. Which I think kind of talks to the whole like, you can't have one person or one company or something like that like in charge of everything, because ultimately like it's not gonna work. Which kind of like I think almost counteracts what Ayn Rand was saying with how she wanted the individual to only work for the betterment of themselves, which really opposes everything that he says, especially like in the end where he was talking about like the whole sharing of community and everything like that. Again, while I think we like had countered that we're not really sure that would work, it also can't just be like a self-sufficient kind of society.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, kind of, sorry.
You're fine. Honestly, you're fine.
I think it was like kind of going into that, like it said specifically like the computer utopians and like the World Wide Web was like not a new kind of democracy, but something more complicated where power was exercised over the individual in new and surprising ways. That was like immediately following after the fact that this was like hidden from the president. This like economic like what's the word I'm looking for, was about to fall. Like it was all about to like crash and stuff. So like there's no way to see that, and I think Rushkoff even mentions like the idea of prediction, how like computers like predict and stuff, but like the movie also mentioned like we can only predict so much. Like we weren't able to see that was going to happen. But going back to like power being exercised in the individual in surprising ways, I was thinking maybe we could talk about that in terms of like Rushkoff and exploitation, because that's like a big connection to the.
Yeah, just like real quick though, like I thought the like the Ayn Rand thing was, I don't know, to me like it was real interesting because at first like she was advocating for like more of an individualistic idea of, you know, going about your life, that you don't have to rely on anybody but yourself, but then at the same time that like elitist group that they had, like the collective or something,
Oh, yeah.
it was like she was saying, you know, that you just need yourself, but then she had like more of an elitist group that, you know,
They kinda,
that
like,
to
fed off
me
of
it
each other.
seemed,
Yeah.
it seemed like it was in its own way like a centralized power, centralized group. So yeah, I thought that was real interesting how it was kind of like, I don't know if it was, you know, a little like hypocritical, or if it was just like a double standard, you know, that it's okay if I do it, but like, you know, on the whole in society it might not be okay. I don't know, what do you guys think?
I don't think she made very much sense at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like, I think we're built on relationships, and
Right.
even when we're on our phone, like we're talking to people, we're doing different things, and that's like our whole thing. So to kind of like say we should do whatever we want and just do what makes us happy is kind of, I don't know, it just doesn't, it's not right.
And I think that's exactly like, you know, that ties into the fact that like, you know, technological progress like by itself can't like create like, you know, a stable environment where it's just like we are just like free individuals. Like we have to do that ourselves. Like, and yes, like tech can like, you know, help with that, but ultimately it's not just the technology. It's like us, how we use it and how we like work with each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there was a lot of backlash whenever her book, the Atlas Shrugged book, came out.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, so you're like openly criticizing capitalism and, you know, like those values, and like she agreed. And
which is
so
interesting because so many of those
very-
like corporate cultures were like, the one dude was like, yeah, my kids' middle names are Ayn
Right.
Rand. I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
And they're
Yeah.
saying that she influenced them, but meanwhile they're the ones that are like the heads of these corporations and everything. So, and then I'm pretty sure like she's from Russia, I think.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
said. So like, do you think that like, I'm not exactly sure what time period she lived in Russia, but like if any of like the like communist movements or anything that like happened in Russia, or like socialistic like ideals were circulating, do you think like those influenced her, and then whenever she came
Absolutely.
to America?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was born in 1905.
Okay, so.
So yeah, very
Yeah.
much so communist Russia.
So like, how do you think that there's any parallels between her and Rushkoff in the way that they view society and how the economy should work?
I think they're like opposites, right? Or, yeah.
I think there's similarities, but like, I don't know. I think they're just so different. Like, I mean, they're very similar, but very different. Just
Yeah.
like, I don't know. Rushkoff wrote this like 5-10 years ago, and it's based solely off of technology. Where, like, Ayn Rand, that was like before technology like
Yeah.
really started. Like, no one could really
Yeah, they
see
said that
how.
she died before like Silicon
Yeah, she
Valley.
died in like 82, 84, something like that. So.
Maybe like talking then in terms of like the economy then, like, because I know that whenever we were in class and we were discussing, like, we were talking about how like socialist Rushkoff's ideas were and how left-leaning they were. So like maybe in that way, like, are there any similarities in how like he's viewing that, and how she's advocating for like the revolution of a totally free society, and
I
how he's
think-
advocating for it?
I think he's in response to, because I think like the California ideology was based off of her ideology, and he's against that. He doesn't, right? That's correct. Like he's not for that. He's trying to find a way out of that ideology because it was built on a system, as he stated, from like to the like, you know, the corporations. So I think it's actually his response to that ideology that was.
I think one way that they would say like are similar is they both want radical change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in another similarity, I don't know how feasible either one of those radical changes are. I think there are bits and pieces that could both like help out society as a whole, but to say like that we should all be like Ayn Rand's like not collective culture, but like the elites and like everyone's doing their own thing. I don't think that would work. Obviously, it hasn't worked for anyone that's tried. But then also with Rushkoff, I don't know how like cutting big corporations and just being like screw Google, Uber, and everything in between, so that the like little people can have a say. I don't think would work either, because eventually like those little companies would end up getting bigger, and we just be in like the cyclical like turmoil of somebody's growing from small to big, and then you have to start all over again.
The one thing that's like different about him, so Ayn Rand or whatever, she's more like she doesn't want like corporations to like. I'm sorry, so and so okay, so I'm trying to think how to explain this. So Rushkoff, he wants big corporations to lend money to like smaller ones so they can grow, and as an economy they all grow, and that involves being selfless as a company, and her whole agenda is being all about yourself. So for her to say, so she's all about, she's more, if she was living now, she would, and she was arguing against Rushkoff, she would say that big corporations should keep growing and keep getting money and screw the small ones. So that's how they're very different, I think.
The movie also mentions commodification, so turning something into a product which has money value. So like into your thoughts as commodities for corporations. So this goes right back to the algorithm and like the economy for likes, in the sense that this also this I'm tying this back into there is an episode from the Black Mirror which was mentioned in class that I just so happened to like watch for my philosophy class, and it basically talks about like how we like, it was in the terms of like rating people. So like they would get like likes and stuff, and that determined whether or not like how people saw themselves and stuff. So, or how other people saw them. So like that kind of goes back into it in terms of like how it exploits like dehumanization and stuff.
And that relates back to like the cell phone tetrad, and like you were going more like toward like the social media aspect of the use of cell phones and everything. So like commodifying like yourself as a product, like I think it's fair to say that like what people post on like Instagram and like Twitter and stuff like that, it's like whatever like their brand is, whatever like they want to put forth. And at the documentary mentioned that cyberspace is a black hole that sucks up personality and energy and then represents it as an emotional spectacle. And they related that to like the Monica Lewinsky scandal, how her friend was like recording their phone conversations and then putting it out there. Like it just makes it one whole big spectacle in that way.
And I think it's interesting too, like the whole like making yourself a brand thing, because people literally have like monetized their Instagram accounts being influencers.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like interesting to see how that has kind of shifted too into something that's maybe not so much a communication platform, but like here's an extra layer on top of the ads that you're like subliminally seeing. Like these people that you follow that like you've grown to almost like trust are now trying to tell you something as well, which I think is something that they kind of talk about like throughout the book, and how like you almost form a connection with these companies because like in Uber, like you're almost saying like screw the taxi company because you don't want to pay so much for them, or an Airbnb, like I don't want to pay for a whole hotel kind of thing. And so like you almost try to disassociate from a brand while reassociating with a different brand, just because you like form that level of trust. At least you think it's a level of trust.
Yeah.
Going back to the social media thing like you were talking about, with like people just basically like doing what everyone else is doing, and kind of like this is like memes and stuff, and just like you feel out of the loop if you're not seeing this or whatever, and that kind of makes like us less individualistic because we're all trying to be like the same thing almost, and it's making us a culture of followers to like a worldview.
Yeah, we should have like counteract that idea of progress. We're all just like copying each other.
This can go right back to Postman, as he says, like our technologies impact our cultures. And then I just, so like how we like communicate with others is also influenced by that. I was just like thinking of like the idea of image, and I guess in terms of Postman, I guess he mentions like the television gives us like a conversation with like images. So how do you think social media, like what the role of social media in that conversation with like images is like what I was like trying to like connect it back to. Like it's like a different form of that. But like this is kind of different. I don't know. Do you think that connection works or not? It was just something that occurred to me. Or do you think it's like separate?
I mean,
Good.
Like I'm still going back and forth because I think like it could kind of still be both, because like social media is presenting this image of like what we want the world to see and everything, but then there's also like the reality part of it too, because people can post like they're like how like some people like breakfast in bed and like they have like a really like fancy little thing, but like in reality like they're like all like makeup's like all smudged and hair in a messy bun and everything. So like there's like those two different ways that people can present themselves, but like we do more so see like, you know, what that fake reality is, that
Right.
fake image.
Mhm.
Sorry, yeah, no, it's just something that occurred to me as I was like sitting there,
Yeah.
but, yeah, no,
Yeah, people aren't what they post. It's what they want to be
Mhm.
almost.
Right. Yeah, I think like during like my like digital detox or whatever, like I wasn't checking Instagram or anything like that. So it's like like whenever like, you know, how you go through it and then like you go like all the way through and then you're like, okay, like that message pops up like, oh, you're all caught up and
Mhm.
everything. I feel like, I don't know, like it's just more like, okay, get through, like make sure you get through all of these, like you see these, and then like once you like see it, like you're done. And like what you see along the way, like, you know, it's just like fake stuff most of the time.
Mhm.
So,
also kind of going off of that with like the economy of likes and stuff, like the more likes you get, like the more of an influence you are.
Mhm.
Just like that point, and like there's such like a thing about like, well, if this photo doesn't get enough likes, then I guess I have to delete it. You know,
Yeah.
like there's like that,
Mhm.
like that
Sure,
is
yeah.
totally an
Acceptance.
impact on.
Yeah.
It's not considered, I guess, like acceptable in a sense because
Yeah.
it didn't get enough likes.
I think it's crazy too that like people's jobs are obviously like in social media, so like they're studying how to get the most likes and that's what they're getting paid for, while we're like just doing it for fun kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's also funny to think that like on Snapchat, like somebody's job is keeping track of streaks, and like if you don't hit that streak or you miss your day, like you feel like you've kind of lost something, just because that's how we feel, like we're tied to people, and almost like another sense of like someone likes me because they're constantly communicating with me, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that it's monetized from like both sides, and like it's opened up a whole new realm of jobs, but then it's also like made us interact differently.
Yeah, and I think, I forget what class it was, but I know in one of the classes we had like Professor Walks mention Edward Bernays, and I actually had like an intro to psych class last semester, and like we actually watched like a BBC documentary about that and how that impacted like public relations and everything, and it was like the very first like public relation campaign or something. It was like to get women to start smoking. And it was during like one parade, like in New York, they had, you know, a group of women like come out, and it was, I think they called like the cigarettes like freedom sticks or something. And so it was like, oh, well, so if you want to associate like, you know, smoking cigarettes with like American ideals, like having freedom and everything like that, then like, and if you're a woman, then you're like, you'll do this. And then that's how like it all started and everything. So it's, you know, that manipulation by, you know, the powers that be, or, you know, the elite that, you know, influence how like we present ourselves. And what's interesting is that we think that like we're being, you know, we're acting as individuals when we're doing that, when we're really not, and we're just, you know, pawns of the corporation or organization. And it's weird that like that they can manipulate us that much to think that we are being individuals and acting as individuals, when in fact, you know, they're the ones pulling the strings.
Which is following what has been established as like the norm in terms of like how technology has been established as like it just had the impact that it has on culture. I was trying to think of the word, I can't come up with it, but
I think it's interesting too, like most of our like social movements of like wanting to be like the individual, wanting to break the system, wanting to like break the glass ceiling, wanting to be, I don't know, hipster, like that's all kind of like stemmed from like following ideas that were given to us. So if anything, it like counteracts the said movement, which I think is like something that's always been tied in history, but now it's just like so easy for us to see, like whenever a movement happens, like people from California can impact the people that are over here, or vice versa. And it's so easy for everyone to like think that it's their own idea, but they're really just like using the same thing that's going on everywhere.
Yeah. So like, I don't know how much time we have left, but
A minute and 25 seconds.
so maybe like as like a final question, like, okay, so like I think we have like a pretty good consensus that like it's not us all the time making those decisions, and how you know, like corporations are still like in charge. Like, does that make you feel like that we can ever, you know, break, you know, like cut those puppet strings of corporations? Like, how Rushkoff like was advocating for, you know, like digital distributism and like, you know, like everything else that he was saying about like investing in like small, like don't go big, go small, and local and everything like that. Do you think like doing those, like taking those steps could actually change
I'm
how
not-
the corporations and everything functions?
I'm not quite sure. I mean, a lot of people. I'm not quite sure. Like exactly like how it would work, like how we would get everybody on board, and then just in terms of like you mentioned, like the power law dynamics. I feel like that's always going to be there. I had a chance. This goes into like the second video and stuff of how they tried to do that, but then there were still power law dynamics because of like humans and stuff. So like I don't really know. Like maybe it could work. I don't know.
I just think
So-
because of human nature, just like it would never,
Yeah.
like it's just.
So are we just hopeless cogs in the machine forever?
I mean-
I don't.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean,
honestly,
I'm
like-
sure maybe by like the fact that we're like identifying that this is an issue, that
Yeah.
we can come closer to what RushCon wants. Whether or not we get there, we get there like 100% is, I'm not sure. I think
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to tell. And
I think we're too
Yeah.
deep. Like I don't think there's anything that could.
Yeah, as a collective, yeah.
Yeah, I think especially too with the way that some of companies are working, like there definitely should be a check system that needs to be in place because Amazon is literally almost everything between grocer, they're now buying pharmacy companies and they have
Yeah.
technology. Google with Alphabet, that like so that's the conglomerate company, and Alphabet's literally like has their hand in everything. So like stuff like that, I think that there needs to be a switch in some way, shape, or form, or else like we're royally screwed.
yeah.
But I don't think that it's going to get to the
Yeah.
point of like everyone buys from your local farmer and your
Yeah.
small business shop. Like I don't think
Yeah.
that we're going to hit that like almost utopian
Yeah.
style that he's hoping to.
Yeah, I think the best thing we can do is like if that is part of like your values, then do that. Like I know it's part of mine. Like I really don't buy anything from Amazon ever. Like it's just like something I try to avoid. So I think like if more people get on that like spectrum or idea, like maybe like some people could, but like I think we're too
Invested.
Way too invested.
All right. Well, great discussion, guys.
Mhm.